you have given, but we will cover that as a part of our course.
Okay.
So starting off with logistics execution. So I mean, since you have been working in this area, so just still overview. So how actually this evolved is initially most of the ERPs were developed to basically cater the FI financials, and they actually moved on and started having more functionalities like then first thing related to FI was then MM, then SD. First people try to account everything, then they try to manage what is accruals, how much they are earning or how much revenue they are getting. Then they look at the profit, and then they try to manage the cost. So so what happened in this is, it for SAP it became FI, MM, SD, then PP, and then they realized just doing transactions in MM and SD will not serve the purpose. They also need some way of actually tracking the execution in the system on the shop floor or on the warehouse or in the yard. Things would still happen, but how do you track them in your system? And that's where the logistics execution evolved. That's the time, say, where the new players, where the niche players like Manhattan, I2s, now JDA, and Meningistics and other guys came into picture. Then 2000 was the time when people started focusing more on logistics execution, and then companies like a lot of small companies started coming up, and the focus started shifting. And that was the time when SAP also changed gear, and you had your 4.6 to 4.7, and then 4.7 to your 5, and this was the time when the shift also happened in terms of thinking beyond R3 and thinking beyond just GUI, and NetWeaver came into picture, because till that time there was no real threat to the enterprise software that SAP was selling. And then when the complete package now, because these all different modules were developed as different each individual modules, and SAP started more in making them more integrated, so that it gives a more clear visibility to the customer. And then the business suite came into existence. So the word business suite, what came into existence is nothing but kind of, say, your SAP CRM, which is, you can say, SD side, and then which license with SD side. Then you have SAP ERP, and then you have your PLM, or what nowadays they call it as a 360 product. Then you had your SAP supply chain, and then SRM, so which you might have seen now, SAP acquiring Ariba, that also changes. So Ariba coming into picture also changes a lot of supply chain and different other modules, because it interacts with a lot of collaboration places like if you would have heard of supply network collaboration. So these are the different modules to which Ariba touches. And then the business suite came with the underlying layer of NetWeaver. Till 4.6, 4.7, not much of NetWeaver was there. You didn't have an underlying layer of NetWeaver. Everything was ABAP based, and then you moved forward. Again, since you had also been in this for around 11 years, you would have also seen this shift from pure ABAP to NetWeaver. Yeah. So that's where the business suite came into existence, and then NetWeaver actually when my SAP business suite came, it actually came as a technical foundation, and it also acted as an application and integration platform. So because what happened is now as a suite you would need to have more integrated landscape. Earlier you had only ECC, and even within ECC you had logistics, financials, HR. So that's how the business suite was designed. And then when that's how ERP was designed, or enterprise central component as it is called in current parlance. So that was designed, and now when you had to integrate it with other components which were developed on new technology, NetWeaver helped you to do that. So in most of the recent most of the new installations that you would see, you would have NetWeaver as the layer, and your most of the whether ECC or SAP SCM or anything would be installed over that. So NetWeaver layer would be actually a component beneath your application and just above the basis layer. So that's how the complete architecture also changed. So just wanted to give you a brief of how the things change from the business suite perspective. Maybe may or may not help, but okay. Then coming to what SAP calls as a SCM portfolio. Again, I am referring to a old slide. Now you have your APO, which is Advanced Planning and Optimizer, and then you have EWM, which is Extended Warehouse Management. Then you have ECC, and then you have Event Management. So your APO is for planning and optimization. So this is the place where you will do demand planning and supply network planning, and even production PPDS, production planning and detailed scheduling. So which is again, so demand planning will do planning for sales and forecasting to an extent. So it would be in a bigger time horizon, say for months or for year. SNP is supply network planning, so it would be a planning on a lower time horizon. Say it would be around, say, a week, a day. Then you have PPDS, where you can actually do a planning on the per second levels. So because in production planning you are discussing, or you are trying to plan which material would be at what stage of your production cycle. So that's where APOK comes into picture. And then you have EWM. So APO pushes back data to ECC. Then in ECC you will have your purchase orders created, deliveries created, replenishment orders created, and then they will be pushed to, say, EWM for execution. So again, this is an area which is extension of WM, and It's a separate course in itself. Maybe once you go through WM, you might like to go for it at a later stage.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so, and then we have ECC. Again, we'll come into ECC in a bit detail later. And then you have event management. So event management, even I don't know whether you saw it for your purchase order, because there are a few scenarios for purchase order collaborations also, which available in event management, and there are companies which use it. So that's basically you can actually track your orders, like when your purchase order created, whether your supplier accepted it or not accepted it, whether he has scheduled the delivery. So instead of going into something say elaborate as supplier network collaboration or say Ariba, there are few functionalities that event management can help you, but not to the extent as Ariba. It is like very small subset of what Ariba or SNC would help you, but still it gives you a visibility into complete process. Again, after this there is another application which got added, which is called transportation management, TM, and EWM, TM and EM are nowadays called supply chain execution platform, which is again part of say SCM, and APO, SNC and APO and SNC and S&OP, and there is another thing called SCIC. I don't remember the exact thing. They are called supply chain planning platform. So now supply chain portfolio has also got divided into two bigger platforms. One is your planning platform and another is your execution platform. So that's about supply chain. Okay, any questions here? Then else we move to the ECC side.
Yeah, we can move on.
Hopefully this information helps. Maybe you would have known it already.
Yeah.
Okay, coming to the ECC part, which you would be seeing day to day. So basically in ECC there are three major parts, you can say, which you might need. One is your logistics, where MM resides, and then accounting, where most of the entries hit, and HR. So from a logistics standpoint, we have these four broader pillars of logistics in ECC. One is SD, sales and distribution for your revenue and customer interface. Then you have materials management, which you anyways would know. Then you have logistics execution, which license with other two, including PP at times. So these four of them on a very high level make what we call as a logistics in ERP or ECC. Okay, now coming to the details of logistics execution. So again, if you look at logistics execution, in principle it has three major partitions, or three major sub-modules. One is warehouse management, one is transportation, and third one is shipping. So shipping is basically where your deliveries come into picture, whether it is an inbound delivery, whether it's an outbound delivery. It comes under the shipping umbrella. Then you have your warehouse management. Again, the output of shipping, which is your delivery, becomes input for warehouse management. Similarly, output of shipping also becomes input for transportation. So if you see the bottom part, these are the different places where you have the interaction. Even though the figure shows the interaction with MM, but WM also interacts with SD side, basically the shipping part, the outbound deliveries or inbound deliveries. So the major differentiation between transportation, which is TRA, and WM is so warehouse management in nutshell, actually in any, not even in SAP, whenever you talk about warehouse management in IT parlance, whether it is I2 or Manhattan, they describe warehouse management as movement of goods within the organization. So within the organization premise, basically if you have a warehouse in Singapore, say in Jurong East, whatever happens in that Jurong East warehouse would come under the purview of warehouse management, and whatever happens outside, whatever movement happens outside that warehouse will come under transportation. So this is more related to goods movement inside the plant, goods movement inside the warehouse, and TRA is goods movement outside the warehouse. Of course, you would have a intermediate part here where you will also have yard. So yard is a place which also acts as a kind of a switch over from warehouse to transportation. So this is basically something about logistics execution on a very high level. Any queries, or we move further?
Yeah, we can move further.
But only thing we have to keep always in mind, WM would mean would always denote any goods movement inside the warehouse. Doesn't mean intra-company, it is the same premise. And transportation outside the premise.
Okay.
So I mean, again, there might be a situation. So what I have seen, so there can be a scenario where you have two plants at the same location, maybe, and if the material is in the same warehouse, okay, then from your MM side, you would still make a, say, a stock transfer order, and then in shipping side you create an outbound delivery to show basically outbound delivery from plant 1 and inbound delivery for plant 2. But within warehouse there might be a case that material doesn't move at all, because or maybe it moves from logical location to logical location. So this kind of thing also happens. So in some places, in some countries where there is a differentiation between spares and raw material, in that cases that logical movement happens, but not in most of the countries. In some countries there is a different, the government treats spares at a different rate and raw material at a different tax rate. So that's why you have to maintain differentiation. Okay, so
Yeah.
moving forward. So these are the different organization units in organization unit in LE. So on a high level you have warehouse number, and for WM shipping point for shipping, and transportation planning point for transport, LETRA. Excuse me. Did you have any knowledge about these three? Because shipping point or receiving point is something that you might have used
Yeah.
in for sure when you are creating stock transfer orders.
Yeah.
So just going by the definition, warehouse number is the highest level organization unit for warehouse management. So it is basically, this number denotes, this three-digit or three-character number denotes the complete warehouse, and you can map your complete warehouse to this number. So
Nafi, sorry, Srini, just a moment, please.
Girish.
Somebody knocked the door. Just a moment, just 2 minutes.
Okay.
Hello, Srini. I'm sorry. Somebody knocked the door. Hello?
No worries, no worries.
Yeah.
No worries. Okay. Okay, so warehouse number, we are at warehouse number. So warehouse number, again, it can correspond to a logical warehouse, as I told, and it can also denote a physical warehouse. So basically it can be that, again, taking an example of say let me recollect some big company in say Changi Logistics Park, say DHL, or who's that new guy, Shankar, DB Shankar. Okay, so suppose say DB Shankar has to maintain the, or say Richland Logistics, whichever you take. So suppose they do manage inventories of multiple companies, say Procter and Gamble, or Nestle, or some other companies. So they might have, say, a segregated area in the same physical location, or they actually, I mean, it depends on them how they want to store it. So they might treat that in the same building, one portion of the same floor, they might call it a warehouse for say Procter and Gamble. They might call the other part as say warehouse for say Nestle. Okay, so it can be the same building, or in the same building there can be logical or physically segregated areas. So this is your warehouse number, that you can actually use the warehouse number to denote that. And again, this warehouse number would have its own substructure, and which will come in later course. But for now, the biggest or the highest level entity that you have in warehouse is warehouse number. It's a 3-digit code. It's like your company code, or like for you have your highest level entity, say purchase organization, a 4-digit PR code, or a plant code. So similar to that it is.
Okay.
Then you have shipping point. So shipping point is again the basic need for starting the shipping process. Again, in some process, in the inbound side, the same shipping point is also called a receiving point. But again, the LE as a module was started more for the outbound part. So that's why you have more shipping point, more used than receiving point. So shipping point is basically it is used to map a location. Again, this location can be actual. So again, taking an example of say a warehouse. So in the warehouse, a shipping point can denote a particular loading area. It can also denote a group of people who are responsible for shipping process. So again, in the same loading area or the loading door, you can have a group of employees who are working for say Procter & Gamble, taking the example of same Richland Logistics or any other logistics warehouse example, and there are other group of employees who take care of say P&G. So it can also denote a group of people, and so you can create one or more shipping point. And so again, going by the book, so you can have a shipping point, a separate shipping point for each shipping type. So basically you can have a shipping type for air, express, rail. Again, if you look at shipping point from a very big company's standpoint, so let's take an example of say steel producing plant. So a steel producing plant would have you ever worked in that steel plants by any chance?
No.
Okay. Okay, so basically what happens in a steel plant is, so if you work in say so if you are in say Europe, so Arcelor, if you take an example of say Arcelor steel plant, so Arcelor would also have a rail track coming inside their premises, or any big company would have, a steel company would have. So this rail track would be used for shipping bulk, lot of bulk sheets. So sheets are pretty heavy, 1 ton, 2 ton each. So you load it on the each rail car and then ship it. And similarly, you can also ship the goods, or you can transport the goods via truck. So they will also have a loading point for truck. So in that scenario, you would have a shipping point for truck, you would have a shipping point for rail. So that's how you would differentiate between the shipping points. Then coming to transportation planning point, first we discussed about warehouse number, so warehouse number was for warehouse management, shipping point for LE shipping, and transportation planning point is for LE-TRA or LE transportation. So LE transportation needs TPP or transportation planning point, so that is kind of again similar to shipping point. It can be a physical location, it can be again group of people. In shipping again it can be like shipping type. You would have a group of people responsible for, again going to the steel plant example, the group of people responsible for planning the transportation via rail might be different from group of people planning the transportation via truck, because again both of them are pretty different. What also happens in case of planning point is, uh, again you can have the planning point based on the kind of deliveries you are doing. So suppose if you have an express kind of delivery, then you would have a separate group of people. If you have, say, if you have a normal delivery, then you would have a separate group of people. So so it can also denote a logical or a group of people. So again, to sum up, the highest level org unit for LE is warehouse number, shipping point, and transportation planning point. Coming to the warehouse number, so for a warehouse number you would have say on the top level you would have a warehouse number, again which is the topmost entity. Then next you have something called a storage type. So keeping it simple at this point of time, because this is something which we will discuss in pretty detail. So storage type would be nothing but if you can think of say your own refrigerator at home. So you have a shelf for cold storage. Say you keep ice or meat products or refrigerated product in the freezer, and then you have a subsection for the other grocery items that you want to keep. So even in a refrigerator you have two kind of storage types. So that is kind of segregation that you can think of on a very layman level. When you come to more or less a warehouse, actual warehouse, you would have to think on a very high level, saying that there can be small goods which can be kept in a high rack. Then there can be goods which are like steel plates which have to be stored in say bulk area. So you can create your storage types according to that. Again, the storage type can be physically separate places, or they can be same place you can have storage type. But in general, the best practice is if you have say a steel plate and these kind of products are coming, you create a separate storage type for bulk. If you have say high rack, low rack, then you can demarcate your storage types accordingly. Then storage type can also be further divided into something called section. So again, coming back to the analogy of say a refrigerator, you can have partitions in the same refrigerated storage space. So these can be thought of as a section, and then these sections can also be further divided and you can have something called as bin. So bin, if you look at it, is the lowest structure for the complete warehouse. So your material or the actual product would be lying in a storage bin. And the storage bin, again we will come to the specifics of storage bin bit later. But on a very high level substructure, you would have a warehouse number which will have storage type, then your storage type would have some sections, and sections would have bin. So again, these are more or less customizing entries, and then you can create a number of bins, and then your bins can be of different types. So you can have a concept of say bins for bigger bins, smaller bins. In a high rack storage you would have say 1 by 1 by 1 height of pallets kept at the top, and bigger pallets kept at the lower racks. So that kind of bin types also can be created. Then also there is something also called as an interim areas, which we would discuss in further. So what happens in an interim area is you would have kind of warehouse management activities happening, but ultimately it has to have a touch point with inventory management, and these interim areas like goods receipt and goods issue play an important role in doing that touch point. So if you have goods movement within these interim areas, it would affect both inventory and warehouse. So you also have a concept of interim areas, but again it is nothing but a you can think it of as a storage type, and again you can create sections in it and bins. Okay, so this is about yeah.
For the storage type, for this interim one, we also can create a section and bin, is it?
Of course, you can create, but what happens, I have not seen till now whatever WM or EWM implementations I have seen, nobody creates multiple sections in interim, because it's kind of a handover or handshake point for WM and IM. So they just create 1 or 2 bins at the max.
Okay, and is this section and bins is mandatory for those interim storage type?
Bin is mandatory, section is optional.
Okay.
Because ultimately so again a bit more thing about bin. Bin is mandatory because your address of your material would be given by bin. So wherever the material lies within the warehouse, it would be in a bin. So so basically if you unload any goods while goods receipt, so a truck comes, truck unloads the material, and material is in say near the door, even that door staging area or the door space would be created as a bin. Now after that, suppose it moves to say quality, okay, you do some checking, even that quality work center is also created as a bin, because you need to have a visibility of where your material is or where your product is in the warehouse, and that is why a bin. So basically that is the address, as they call it in the layman's language.
Okay. And this bin number, is it, for example, if we do a good resist, then it will be, there will be a TR created with the TR created, it will be carry the TR number as a bit, or is it going to carry the material document as a bin for the good resist?
Okay, so there are two things here. I mean, what happens is, in some cases, if you have a handshake point, say, so suppose take an example of say outbound delivery. So your material is lying in say bin A, B, C, D. So you pick it from bin A and you bring it to, say, staging area for goods issue. In goods issue, you just have one bin, okay, and it would be assigned a identification for that particular moment, and that identification can be the delivery number or the TR number. So that is where the concept, the next concept comes, which is called Quant. Again, that would be something that we will discuss a bit later. So it is like, again, coming back to the refrigerator example, you bring some vegetables, say ladyfinger or say cucumber, and so you had brought some cucumber from, say, Aldi or Walmart or Carrefour, whichever place you are currently, and you bring some grocery and vegetables, and last week you had brought some cucumber, and so that had a different GR date. I mean, again, if you look at it from a very basic level, it will have a GR date, the date on which it came to your house. So that becomes a GR date of that cucumber, and you bring new cucumbers with a new GR or a new batch. But again, both would be kept next to each other, but with a different uh, GR characteristics, you can say. So that would be even in the same bin, but with a different identification. So you would still need a way to differentiate between two. Even with the same batch, you would need a different way of identification. So that's where the concept of Quant will come.
What is it? What is it name?
It's called Quant, Q-U-A-N-T.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So again, since we have already discussed that, so you have, say, this material, say A, it has been assigned a quant, say 6 or 1 or 11. It's again internal numbers and used by system just to differentiate between the two different, what should I say, materials in the bin. So basically, I mean, so in ECC, WM materials can be viewed and moved in quants only, and so actual material number is irrelevant as a unit of measure. So there is a default criteria which warehouse management system uses for putaways and stock removal to decide which material quantity forms a quant. Again, a quant is a logical number that system gives, which never goes to the, say, to the end customer. It is just for the logical grouping of material within the bin, and again, bin is in the warehouse, so for the purpose of warehouse. So again, we'll discuss that criteria in detail, but on a very high level, it will be material number, stock category. Stock category can be, say, it's a blocked stock or quality stock or a unrestricted. And then special stock also for the sales order, for the project, and then your plant and storage location assignment. And then also it can also have a batch and storage unit number. And the storage unit number would come once we go into finer details of WM. Okay, so we jumped a bit, coming back to the where we were. So if you look at the complete positioning of say how complete logistics execution org data is placed within the realm of ECC. So you would have company code which is again attached to the client, and then you have plants which are attached to the company codes, and then you have your transportation planning point which is also attached to the company code. Then you have your shipping point, which is attached to the plant, and then you have plant and storage location combination assigned to the warehouse. Now here interesting thing to see is your transportation planning point can be only attached to one company code, but a company code can have multiple TPP points similar to plant. Okay, then your shipping point can be attached to multiple plants, okay, within the same company code. Then your warehouse number also can be assigned to multiple plants and storage location combination. So for warehouse number assignment to warehouse number assignment is always to the combination of plant and storage location. Okay, any questions? So the reason for having a transportation planning point assigned to a company code is because typically in a transportation scenario you would actually incur cost for freight or freight cost. So you would have to calculate and settle that cost, and then you would have a profit, loss or balance kind of scenario. So for that purpose you would need to connect it to the company code. Shipping points are assigned to the plants, and again it can be assigned to multiple plants, and they can actually be used to map production location or to the company subsidiaries. So again you can have kind of scenarios as I discussed. There can be a scenario where a steel plant has two shipping point, one for say rail, one for trucks or road. Similarly, there can be a scenario where you have a company, let's say again coming back to say example of a warehouse in Changi Logistics Park. You have the same dock or same shipping point which is used by P&G, which can be again a different warehouse or a plant, and again by Nestle. So the same shipping point being shared across multiple plants. So that can be the scenario, and so it can be assigned to multiple plants at the same time, and vice versa, plant can have multiple shipping point. Warehouse number is always attached to combination of plant and storage location. So once you assign a combination of plant and storage location to warehouse, then you are attaching the inventory with warehouse, because as of now in your what you would be doing in you have your inventory in the location, correct, storage location. But when you move a bit further in details, when you want to put it in warehouse, then that material or the inventory has to go from storage location and also needs to flow into warehouse. So that's why you need to have a plant and S-lock combination assigned to the warehouse number. So you need not to connect each and every plant and S-lock combination to warehouse number. Only storage locations which you want to be managed by warehouse, you can assign them to the warehouse number. Because suppose in case of say production plants, there might be different storage locations where they keep say indirect material. say uh, say a scrap, or say, I mean, indirect, sorry, scrap meaning for steel it meant, okay, indirect material, say if they are constructing a new facility, so they might have bought cement or steel or something, so that they keep at a separate place, so that you might not want that part to be connected to the warehouse, so you can keep that inventory at the location, plant and storage location level in IM, and only for, say, direct materials you create plant and SLOC assignment to the warehouse. So
Okay.
yeah.
Question. We can assign multiple storage location to one warehouse, right? So
Correct.
the question is, let's say if I put some stock, for example, in one storage location number 1, and another one is in storage location number 2 for the same material and
Okay.
the same batch. So
Correct.
how in the warehouse management will be able to differentiate that this one is come from this storage location and this one is come from storage location number 2.
So
How it's
coming back
differentiated?
to the quant principle, if you
Mm-hmm.
remember when we talked about that quant number that we saw, again, that
Mm-hmm.
is the next part,
Mm-hmm.
that is derived based on material number,
Mm-hmm.
stock category,
Mm-hmm.
special stock assignment,
Mm-hmm.
and plant and storage location assignment. So if
Okay.
suppose this A3 material, if it had come from, say, a different plant and SLOC, it would have a different quant.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Understand. Yeah.
So if all these four criterias match, apart from this, you also have a criteria of batch. So if suppose there is a batch 34 and
Mm-hmm.
another batch 35 comes, then
Mm-hmm.
system will, even though it is the same bin, system will assign it a separate quant, and this internal quant number gains significance now. If you look at it,
Okay.
same bin has to be used by multiple plants, multiple batches, so you need a logical identification, and that's what quant helps you.
Okay.
Okay, so this was pretty much what I wanted to cover today. Again,
Mm-hmm.
to keep it uh, just to give you a very high level overview of
Mm-hmm.
logistics execution.
Yep.
In uh, next class, we'll touch upon the different concepts and then
Okay.
move forward.
Okay.
Okay, then see you on Friday, and I
Uh,
heard you would be moving to
Singapore, yeah.
Singapore back.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay. For the next